Hello, everyone, and welcome. We will get started in just a moment. Well, welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Tapping into Quality, the Standards Implementation in Vermont. So really excited that you were able to join us today. I am Julie Matusik, and I am with the National Family Support Network team, and I will be moderating today's webinar, but just getting us started. And I have a treat for you all in just a few minutes, and excited to share our presenter. But before that, just want to go over a couple of housekeeping items. So if you are joining us online, you can listen directly through your computer speakers. And if you joined us via the phone number that Zoom provided, your line has been muted to minimize background noise. And for those of you that are online, you'll note here in just a moment that there will be a link in the chat for you, which you can click to download the different handouts that we'll be referencing and that you might find helpful with your wanting to explore the standards. In addition, you can put questions that you may have in the Q&A section. We have a particular portion for that. So we just don't want your questions to get missed in the chat. So please feel free to chat and share any reflections or anything you particularly liked at all in the chat. But we have, you'll see next to the chat box on your Zoom panel, you'll see where it says Q&A. And if you click that, that's where we'll invite you to enter your questions in. And then we will take questions at the end. But if you have any tech difficulties, we do have live tech support here today. Cheryl is here to help support us, and she'll be able to answer those questions sooner. But anything related to the content, we're excited to take those at the end of the webinar. But please feel free to enter those as you think of them so you don't forget them. And we will try to get to all of the questions at the end of the webinar today. And if we aren't able to get to all of the questions, someone from our team will reach out to you after the webinar. And also want to mention too that today's PowerPoint, as well as the handouts and the recording of today's webinar, will be available on the NFSN website this time tomorrow afternoon. And also, last housekeeping item here, when you exit the webinar, an evaluation will automatically appear on your screen. And we really appreciate you taking a moment to complete that, as it provides us with valuable feedback that informs future webinars. So that's a little bit of our housekeeping. We want to dive right in with getting a sense of who's with us here today. Really excited to know who is here today. So take a peek at this map and you'll see we've divided the United States and its territories into regions. So see which corner of the United States you're in, and Cheryl's going to launch a poll and you can let us know where you're joining us from. And even though this map just has the United States, there are options for Canada. And if you're joining us from another country as well, definitely let us know in the poll. All right, take like 2 more seconds if you haven't had a moment to respond just yet, and let us know which region you're joining us from. Righty, let's peek at those results. This is great. We have wonderful representation from across the country. So looks like the South is has the strongest representation, but strong representation from both the Northeast, West, as well as the Midwest. So great, thank you, thank you. Great to know some geographic diversity of who's here today. And we have a couple other questions for you as well, just to get a sense of who's here today. This next one is about your affiliation. So do you represent a family resource center, or are you working at that family resource center network level, or maybe for another family support program? Or are you a parent leader or in early care and education? And we also have a few other options too: education, child welfare, Department of Government, other. And if you're a private funder, and if none of those resonate with you, just let us know in the chat. We'd love to hear a little bit about who's here today. All right. There'll be a 2-second countdown here if you haven't had a chance to respond yet. And then we'll take a peek at those results. All righty, let's see. Great. Looks like nearly half of the folks here today are representing a family resource center. Wonderful. This will be really helpful. And we also have network level folks, other family support programs, early care and education, governments, and a few other. Great. Wonderful. Great diversity with affiliations as well. Wonderful. All right, last poll, which is about which level you're working at. So Cheryl's going to launch a poll. So maybe you're having the opportunity to work directly with families at the program level, or maybe you're in the management level, or maybe you're working at the policy and systems level. And of course, we have the other two. So take just a moment to let us know. All right, last call for results, and then I'm excited to see. All right, let's take a peek at those results. All right, so lots of program direct service staff, great. Management represented as well as the policy and systems level and others. So great. Well, thank you all so much. It's great to know a little bit about who is here today, and really excited to share this presentation with you. So want to kick off first by sharing some background information. And so the National Family Support Network, we were founded in 2011. And at that time, we had just 8 states that were green on this map. So we had 8 members at the time. Since then, we have more than quadrupled in size. And so we now have 39 member networks. And that represents more than 3,000 family resource centers that are serving more than 2 million people annually. So we have our newest member came aboard, and it was Minnesota and Nebraska. So excited to see this map continuing to grow. And our mission at the National Family Support Network is to promote positive outcomes for all children, families, and communities by leveraging the collective impact of state family resource center networks and championing quality family support and strengthening practices and policies. And our vision, in short, is that whole map that you saw just a moment ago, that whole map would be green, ensuring that all families have access to quality family support programs and services in their very own communities that are supported by strong networks. And here you'll see our areas of work at the National Family Support Network. So everything we do at the National Network falls into one of these buckets. And so the first is connecting and convening member networks to enhance their effectiveness. So increasing their connectedness amongst members for peer learning and for mutual support. And our second bucket is promoting family support best practice and evaluation. So raising awareness of what quality family support is and promoting a common language and standards and evaluation of it through the national implementation of the standards of quality for family strengthening and support. And our third bucket is raising the visibility of the value and the impact of family strengthening and support networks in order to strengthen and increase support for families. So that is a little bit of background information about the national network. And here you'll see our roadmap of our time together today. So I'm going to share just a little bit more information about the background of the standards. If you have not either been certified in the standards or participated in a standards overview presentation, you may find that that would be helpful to just learn a little bit more about the standards, but I'll share how you can do that after the presentation. And then we are excited to hear from the Vermont Parent-Child Center Network implementation and all about the incredible work that they are doing in Vermont. So that will be what most of our time together is today. So really excited for that. And then again, we have time carved out for Q&A at the end. So please be sure to be entering in any questions that you may think of into the Q&A panel. We'll also share today some resources and some opportunities that are available to you through the National Family Support Network. And again, we'll close with that brief evaluation that'll pop up when you exit the webinar. So just to provide a brief overview about the standards and why they're so incredible, is that these standards, one of the items is that they are designed to be used by all stakeholders. So whether you're a public department or a foundation or a community-based organization or a family, you can use the standards as a tool for planning and providing and assessing quality practice. And these standards, they uniquely integrate and operationalize two key frameworks from our field. The strengthening family supports, the principles of family support practice, and then also the second frameworks, the 5 protective factors, which you may have heard before today. And let's see here. So another really wonderful thing about these standards is that they create a common language across different kinds of programs. So whether you're a family resource center or working in a home visiting program or a child development program, you're able to speak the same language. So prior to this set of standards, our field didn't have a way to do that. Think of healthcare and these other fields, education, that have standards that they're able to speak the same language around quality. And our field did not have that prior to these standards. So and these standards, they help ensure that families are supported and strengthened through quality practice. And the standards, it's important to mention, we're not at all trying to sell these standards. These standards are available for free to download on the National Family Support Network website, as well as all of the implementation tools. So we want everyone in the field to be able to think about quality work with families. And let's see here. So the standards, they were revised throughout 2020 and then officially published in March of 2021 with a particular focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion, as well as relevance for both Canada and the United States context. And the standards, they focus on 5 core areas of practice. And you'll see here on the slide, these are the 5 core areas of practice for the standards. And we also refer to these as the 5 sections of the standards. And they each represent a key element of quality practice. So we have family centeredness, family strengthening, diversity, equity, and inclusion, community strengthening, and evaluation. So those are the 5 buckets of the standards. Those are the 5 areas of practice. And as we're talking about programs and networks utilizing the standards, want to flag a tool that is available to you. This one is at the network level, but I want to share particularly because I know we have so many Family Resource Center and folks that are working at the program level, that there is a tool for you that you can download on the website. It's also in the handouts link that Cheryl put in the chat. And so you can download from the website or from the handout folder. you can download the program implementation continuum. And so whether you're using that document at the program level or this document at the network level, these continua, they provide the different steps along the journey, as well as the sample activities for each of those steps. So for example, by participating in a standards overview presentation, that gets you started on that prepare journey. And there's just all of these steps are mapped out for you. And then below, you'll see the resources that are available to you to help you along your journey. So whether you're at the program level and using that tool or at the network level and using this tool, wanted to make sure you have those resources to use on your journey as you are exploring the standards. And so also want to share this now too, because this is a valuable tool that the Vermont network has found helpful in their journey. And as Christy is presenting, you'll see different points along this continuum about how they had progressed along the way. And so with that, I'm very excited, and it's my privilege and honor to introduce to you Christy. Christy is with the Vermont Parent-Child Center Network, and she is their network coordinator. So welcome, Christy.
Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here today, and it was exciting to see the array of backgrounds that people come from, the types of organizations they represent, and that they're here from all across the country. So I'm honored that folks would choose to spend this time this afternoon learning more about Vermont. So as Julie mentioned, I do represent the Vermont Parent-Child Center Network, and that is the member organization with National Family Support Network. And we'll tell you a little bit more about our timeline. The parent-child centers themselves have been around since the 1980s. We were first named in Vermont statute in 1988. And in FY23, the past legislative year, there was a new statute that was enacted that sort of enhanced the original statute and put our core services, the 8 core services that all parent-child centers offer, and our peer review process, and a reference to shared accountability was all included in that act. Parent-Child Center mission is to provide children, youth, and families with strength-based and holistic services across Vermont, and a focus is on early childhood education and prevention. And the network itself, which has been also in existence for decades now, really strives to provide leadership, support, and advocacy on behalf of all its members and in collaboration with key partners. So we have 15, Vermont is not a big state. We have 15 parent-child centers in 12 regions of the state. And through our 15 parent-child centers, we really reach out to all families with young children. The focus of parent-child centers has long been to really support families prenatally and with children into school age. So, and also to support young families and young parents. So some of our founding principles we thought be interesting, because every organization in all the members we know out in the NFSN world, there's many different ways that people are organized. So the Parent-Child Center Network is a member-led 501c3 organization. The directors of the 15 designated parent-child centers comprise network membership. Our decisions are made by consensus, and all of our services from the beginning have been built on the principles of family support practice. 8 core services. All parent-child centers offer these 8 core services. And I won't read you all the details, but just to say that we all offer playgroups and parent support groups. We have concrete supports, which are particularly important during the pandemic, where families could get a lot of their basic needs. They could get assistance for a lot of their basic needs when they couldn't get connected directly sometimes to direct services, because direct services were on pause, so that was a tough time. But parent-child centers were really able to strengthen that concrete supports and help families get through. There's community development, which is a really interesting part of our work and just requires and expects that all parent-child centers are really deeply engaged in the work in their communities. And therefore, the work that parent-child centers do, while we have a commonality, also has a uniqueness to each area, which will depend on community needs and community resources. So that's an important part of our 8 core services. We have parent education. We have lots of different classes on different kinds of topics, and parent support groups as well, which I mentioned earlier. Lots of information and referrals, so people across the communities have a place to call in or walk in to get more information about other resources that could be useful to them. We do an array of home visits, from families who just had a newborn to welcome them into the community to families with complex needs. And we have early childhood services. So some parent-child centers have on-site full day, full year childcare. Some have on-site childcare that may be more specific for a particular population that they're working with, and some are really focused on the most vulnerable families. And then some are providing resources and support to the early childhood services in their communities. So it's different ways of offering these services, but there's a commonality across all 15 of us. Yeah. So here's a beginning of the PCC standards implementation journey. And we like this quote. I think it's a quote from Andrew. It seems very apt. You're always arriving, but never there. The things are constantly evolving. But to start at the beginning, it was something like 2017 that one of the parent-child center directors attended the National Family Support Network member convening and became certified in the standards. She brought that interest back to Vermont, as did some of our state partners who had learned of the standards from another source. I'm not 100% sure what that was, but there was this common interest in these standards would really be beneficial to add to the work that we're all doing and to contribute to how we do the work together. So we had some conversations about, well, how would we do that? And we decided that the Parent-Child Center Network would be the natural member to the National Family Support Network. So in 2019, we had lots of conversations and reached consensus on statewide implementation as a network. And as I mentioned earlier, consensus is a founding principle of the Parent-Child Center Network, which means that you have some really good conversations about making decisions when you take on something new. And that was true here. While there was a lot of obvious reasons to do it, there was also some things that people questioned. So it was rich conversations that we had and decided to go forward. We then thought, well, we need some funding. The Parent-Child Center Network as a member organization really had no staff and very little resources, just dues that people pay. So we were very grateful and fortunate to get a private foundation grant to support initial trainings. We hosted Vermont's first standard certification training that was attended by, I think, all directors and key leadership at each of the parent-child centers. And that was a training that Andrew and Julie came to Vermont to do in a blizzard. So it's memorable for many reasons. And then 2 of our PCC directors became standards trainers, which was also part of our grant that we wrote. So from 2020 to present, the PCCs began using the standards language with funders and legislatures and infusing the language into the PCC statute. So we're really working at how do we bring that language into our all of the operations and our efforts our advocacy efforts. We had 2 standard trainers, and they provided standards overview presentation for each of the PCCs and helped staff work through the self-assessment tool. The network itself offers support now to centers in their implementation journey. I have to just say our 2 trainers were not able to keep their standards trainer certification, but they maintain their connection and knowledge of the standards and continue to provide support and information, not the training itself, but support to all of our members. We do have some funds that we're able to offer each PCC to have a team of 2 or 3 staff participate in the standard certification training. And it's just so very helpful that those trainings can be offered virtually now, and we can partake at different times that work for people in different centers. So that's been a great resource for us all. We are using the standards in multiple ways and participating in NSFN trainings and webinars as presenters and as learners. So why did we do this? What was that conversation when we were reaching consensus about doing it? What were the reasons to go forward? So one is that it's a natural fit. It really does build on the foundational philosophy of family-centered practice and protective factors that the Parent-Child Center Services had always embraced. It demonstrates ongoing commitment to quality services, to families, staff, boards, and community, so that whole array of folks. And it's really an excellent self-assessment tool and enhances the quality of programming. And there are a few more really strong reasons. It contributes to continuity of care across all PCCs. So when we're talking about how are we doing, we can refer back to the standards. The self-assessment tool is being used as a means to check in during the 3 years between our peer reviews. And the standards also have really proven to strengthen our request to the legislature. It shows that we are a strong professional network with a set of shared standards, ensuring families are getting the best possible high quality care. And I can just say as an aside, I spent the morning at the Vermont State House this morning, and the positive feelings that legislators have for the parent-child centers today are just wonderful. And I do attribute part of that to their confidence that we are all working together with high quality standards. So it's a win in many ways. So here's some ways that the standards are making a difference for the PCCs. And I think we just kind of mentioned this, but there are funders, the legislature and grantors who find value knowing that the PCCs across the state are adhering to a shared set of national standards of quality. It really gives assurance to those folks. There's a statewide continuity of care. So while each PCC is unique, we share core services and we share the standards, and thus we have a basis to roll out statewide initiatives. So when our state is looking for organizations that may want to partner with the state to take on some initiatives that are priorities, they know that if they come to the parent-child centers, there's going to be a continuity of care that we can develop and deliver. And then there's a common language with multiple applications in our current work. We're really excited about our work with parent advisory councils, in our peer review process, and in staff recruitment and support is a great tool to use in that setting. So here's some ways that we're using the standard specifically. So as I mentioned, we're very excited about our work with parent advisory committees and the guidance that folks have been getting from the trainings that NSFN has offered. It's been very, very useful. And having parent advisory committees for each PCC is not only a PCC goal, but it is something that the legislature is very interested in and did allude to in the legislation that was enacted and updated last year. So this has been a terrific resource for us. We have infused, as I said, lots of information and use of the standards into our peer review process, especially in the CQI section of the review. We spoke about our work with the standards in the network's semi-annual data collection process and report to the legislature. So it's getting infused into many different things. Woven into 8 core services rubrics of quality. I have a sample of that to show you in a couple of slides down. And that's a new thing we've just been working on and looking at how do we make sure that while we're defining our 8 core services as foundational and high quality, how can we make sure we're fitting in some of the aspects of the standards in there? So we'll show you a little sample of that. And then there's just multiple purposes for the self-assessment. People use it at regular meetings, at staff meetings, with their boards, at annual staff retreats. It's something looked at regularly for teams within organizations and programs, leadership staff, and it also provides a way of thinking about your PCC as a whole organization. So here's a little bit more about our parent-child-centered peer reviews, which, as I mentioned, we do every 3 years, which are like a very comprehensive look at what all is going on within a parent-child center, how is it going, and it provides opportunities for community members, other parent-child center directors, parents, and staff of the parent-child center to get together and really learn together and give feedback to that parent-child center. So the peer review part of it does include a question that's centered around the progress of the standards and also gives an opportunity for folks to learn much more about how the self-assessment plan is being utilized and provides a basis for some really excellent questions. So one of the parts of the peer review is to there's like 3 questions that get asked to the whole team that's assembled, and then the teams give ideas and feedback. And these are always questions that parent-child center who's holding the review is seeking to grow in and learn from. So here's some example questions. How can our PCC continue to grow our commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion? Or how can our PCC deepen our parent engagement opportunities? So I mean, you can see from that how much that dovetails right over to the standards. So we're looking at, how do we share that and build on that? Here's that sample of our rubrics that we're just still working on. So this is really a draft, but we have these domains of different things that we think every core service should have defined. And there's a foundational quality and high quality. And then we thought, well, there needs to be some aspect of the standards. So we just picked some of the standards elements for growth. So we can look back and say, as we're growing, we can look to data analysis, for example, or program modifications. These are the elements that we can use to move from foundational to high quality in our 8 core services, and that everybody would be able to do in a common way across our network. Yeah. So lessons and suggestions. And like we said at the beginning, always arriving. And I think it's important to remember that everything is always evolving. So one of the first lessons is that people leave and that you need a core group at each center to guide the process. So it's important to kind of think about that and make sure that there's some mechanism to continue to have people trained and engaged in the work with the standards. And things change. Things are always in flux in some way. So being able to provide ongoing support for the centers is really, really important. I mentioned this, the standards give traction. And we've seen that the legislators and funders really care about proven standards, and to be able to demonstrate the work you're doing with them has been very valuable. It's not a checkbox, the standards. And I think, to be candid, that was one of the things at the very beginning when we were having our consensus decision-making discussions, that people were like, oh my gosh, we already know we're already embedded in the work of the protective factors, and why do we need to add another layer? And what we have learned from doing it is that this is not just another layer. It's not a checkbox, and the standards and the self-assessment directly contribute to program development in many substantive ways. And then parent advisory councils, like I mentioned, we're just jazzed to be really building those, and we found the trainings to be very useful. So some suggestions for getting started, I think this is a big one at the top, is build the process together. And we as a member organization are well situated to do that. I know there are different types of organizations and it might look different in different settings, but when we were really able to say, okay, if we want to do this, why do we want to do this? And how do we want to do this? And what do we need to do this? It really means that we had a great foundation behind us to move forward. Then to identify a team and resources to support the process as it rolls out. Very important that who are the people that you can go to, or that will come to you and say, how's it going? What do you need? You know, that's an important thing. And I've shown you some of the things we identified, how the standards would add value to our existing work and can advance your future goals. I think that's another really important one. Where do you want to grow? And how can the standards be a contributing element to that growth and guide you along the way? And then finally, is to find ways to integrate the standards into any continuous quality improvement efforts that are going on. And we have the peer review process as an example. So I think that sums up my presentation for this afternoon. We're looking forward to hearing your questions, and I hope that was useful.
So useful. Thank you so much, Christy. Such great information. And I don't know if you have the chat box open, but just to share, there's been left for you in the chat box just about how wonderful it is, asking if it'll be on the website so you can share it with your colleagues. So thank you again, Christy, for being here to share about your incredible journey with the standards. So thank you. Thank you.
Well, you're welcome. And I look forward to hearing any questions people have. It's always helpful for us to hear questions. It helps us think about things and learn from other questions. So please feel free to put some questions out, and also to feel free to contact me anytime after this. I'm more than happy to answer questions or try to help connect you to folks who have more answers than I might.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's great. It's incredible journey. And journey continues, right?
Right. That's the point. Yeah, it's always happening.
Yeah. So I want to invite everyone to take a moment to enter questions that you may have into the Q&A panel. Anything around Vermont's journey. If you want to know a little bit more about any lessons learned, or just if there's anything at all that you have questions about, please put those in there. We would love to hear them. We want to give you a minute to just think about what questions you have, and make sure that you've entered in any questions that you have. So if you haven't entered your questions, please take a moment to do that, and you'll enter those right into the Q&A panel, and we'll do those in just a moment. So while you're entering your questions, we want to go ahead and to share some resources and opportunities available to you through the national network. One opportunity that's coming up this month, I can't believe it's already May, but it is. Later this month, at the very end of the month, you'll have an opportunity to participate in the national briefing. So this is a free event. It's an interactive virtual event, which focuses attention on the value of family resource centers and the value of family resource center networks. And we'll explore how and why family resource centers continue to be scaled across the country. Also, in conjunction with this, another free opportunity that you'll have is to take a virtual tour of a family resource center. So we have a school-based family resource center and a community-based family resource center. So you'll be able to choose one of those to tour. There's also an opportunity to touch base with different networks and learn about their work. And you can ask questions about their work with the standards if you'd like. Other networks are using the standards too. So just a great opportunity to connect, and it's all free and it's all virtual. So you can stay comfortable in your own homes to participate. And speaking of staying home and being comfortable to participate, we have more Webinar Wednesday opportunities available. So next week we have the where we'll have an opportunity to spotlight the incredible work that the South Carolina network is doing, their Family Resource Center network. So they'll share their journey, which spoiler also includes, not spoiler, preview, that's the right word, just their incredible work with the standards too. They're earlier in their journey. And for those of you that are exploring working with the standards, that would be really helpful too. And we have the coming up next month, we have the Uncovering America's Best Kept Secret, where we'll dive into all things FRC and FRC networks. And so those are the upcoming ones. But one thing I wanted to mention too, particularly for those of you that are on that found today's webinar so helpful, hearing from Christy and the Vermont network, we have a whole library of other webinars that have been recorded from other networks, where you can go on and hear from Kentucky or Texas or just other states that are doing incredible work with the standards. And we also have other spotlight networks where we're spotlighting other networks, like we'll be doing with South Carolina next week. So, and that's just a glimmer into the library, but tons of information, tons of content on there. Encourage you to check that out. And Christy had referenced this training in particular with the work with the Parent Advisory Committee. So this training is for starting a new Parent Advisory Committee training, and also wanting to strengthen one that you may have already. And so this is co-trained by a NFSN team member as well as a national parent leader. So they're coming to that table with that fresh experience and able to share that with you. So this is offered throughout the year, and the next opportunity is coming up in June, and there's still a few seats. So if you're interested in that, check that out. And then the standard certification training, Christy had mentioned this too, just there as part of their journey. Of course, downloading the standards and participating in webinars is an amazing place to start. And as you're continuing on that journey, and if you decide you'd like to be certified and check them out more in detail, definitely encourage you to register for one of the standard certification trainings that are coming up in May and June. We have 2 opportunities for that. And your networks, the state where you are in may also provide standard certification trainings. And if you go to the NFSN website and go to the certification training page, you'll be able to see if your state has a contact number about registering for the standard certification training in your state in particular. So, and if you have any questions on navigating that, if anything comes up, feel free to reach out anytime with any questions that you may have around the training. So those were the resources that we wanted to share with you, just so you have those and can stay connected to us. And so I put my contact in here up as well. Christy shared hers, so definitely stay connected. But now we want to go back to the Q&A portion, where you'll have an opportunity to hear some questions that have been asked. So there's a question around if there's any affiliates in particular areas, particular states. And so one, and I believe you may have been talking about the members. I think this was earlier in the presentation when we were talking about the National Family Support Network member networks. So if you go to National Family Support Network and drop down to or hover over About Us and drop down to Members, you'll be able to see a map of our membership. And then, and that's interactive, so you can like learn about each of the states and what they're up to. And then below that, you'll find links to the websites. So the question was particularly about California, and the California network is the California Family Resource Center Association. And so encourage you to check their website out to learn where they have what their involvement looks like across the state. And my dog says hello. If you are hearing her say hello in the background. All right. And then, okay, let's see. The next couple questions are for you, Christy. So this first one is, what stakeholders did you involve and how did you make sure you were able to have the correct people at the table? Good question.
Oh, these are great. Yeah, that is a great question. I think we started with ourselves. You know, as I said, as a member organization, we have the 15 parent-child centers. So we really had to have these discussions with ourselves about moving forward. And there was interest from our primary state partner, which here in Vermont is the Agency of Human Services, and specifically the Health Department and the Child Development Division. And one of our colleagues at the Child Development Division had been to a conference or a training. I'm not 100% sure. So she was very interested and very excited. And we also had with her connections to some of the people she'd met when she was at that conference. We talked to some people from some other states, but we didn't cast the net really widely at first. We really felt like we need to make this commitment ourselves and our key partners in the state who are primary funders, and then let it roll out. So I think it would depend on everyone's situation within their state or within their regions. And for us, we're a small state, like I said, so we had a couple of key state partners and then ourselves. Is that?
Yeah, that's great, Christy. Yeah, that's wonderful.
I do feel like it's always a good question to ask ourselves when we're developing anything, and this is an example, is who else needs to be at our table, and that'll change depending on, you know, kind of what's up.
Yeah, and one incredible thing with the standards is that it doesn't have to just be your network that's using them. It can be anybody in our field, right? So it's almost, you have your question around stakeholders with the network, which is one question, and then you have like stakeholders that can partner in using the standards. So that world can be even bigger. And so if your question is more about the network, definitely encourage you to check out the Uncovering America's Best Kept Secret webinar. We talk about just some of that network development and how to get started. And we have a network development a hub, actually, where you can see examples of surveys that you could send out, and a lot more resources, particularly around network development. So yeah, lots of thoughts and considerations. And Christy's absolutely right that each state is different, and the landscape is different, and how you navigate that is different. So
I think to add to that too, what you're just saying, Julie, is the Parent-Child Center network in Vermont, as I talked earlier, is an established network that's been doing work together for years, decades now. So when decisions like this need to be made, then they need to be made initially at that level. And then, you know, input from others is very important as well. We had to start with ourselves.
Yeah. And that's another thing too, just thinking of like the standards and the network development and how those dovetail. And a lot of, we found that a lot of the more recent networks that have joined, they're using the standards right away because it's helping them get people at the table. It's part of that initial conversation as they are sending out surveys, because they're doing it all together. So it's really cool to see just the different journeys of different networks.
Very much so. Absolutely.
Yeah. let's see here. So let's see, we got that question. And then there's a question about how did you introduce and guide the peer review groups through the standards? Was there a training provided to tell them or about the standards and evaluation tools and things like that? So a couple different pieces there.
Wow. Well, I love talking about peer reviews. I have to say, Parent-Child Center Network has been using peer reviews as a key evaluation tool for decades as well. It was a time when some of us were out talking about them nationally because they had been written into some legislation and funding for the community-based child abuse prevention grants at a time. And it said everybody had to do a peer review. So we had them already in place. And so we were talking about them. An interesting thing about peer reviews, the way we do them in Vermont, is that every peer review is unique to each center. So the center itself works with a facilitator from the network, so the center director and the network facilitator, to really take a look at what's up, how's it going, where do you really feel like you want to gain some deeper knowledge or greater input on some issues that your center is experiencing. And then the standards are kind of just woven into those conversations. They are not, and I think this is a really interesting question that is going to stay with me. I'm going to think about this. They haven't, to my knowledge, yet been presented at a peer review with a specific educational focus about, and here are the standards, and they have informed this process. I could have missed something about that, but I think that's a great thought, is how we help people know more, people who are coming to our peer reviews, to know more about the role the standards have played in the development of that organization or in the development of the questions that are being asked of the group, rather than just a short reference, which I think is what we tend to do, say, well, this was informed by the quality standards. I don't think we've done a lot to actually use our peer reviews to give a broader base of knowledge about the standards, the big picture of the standards. So I thank you for asking.
Yeah.
Very useful.
Yeah. Really great. And then one of the things that I'm always curious about, Christy, because it's unique, how you have the state statute and like you're in the state statute. And can you talk a little bit more about that and just like the standards role in that and just that process a little bit too? Because I think that's incredible.
Yes,
Incredible.
well, like I said, the first statute that was written that sort of recognized the parent-child centers was in 1988. And it was part of kind of the rolling out of parent-child centers. They had just sort of begun in some areas of the state, and there was effort to move them around the state to certain regions, so the whole state would be covered. So part of it was just to basically define a parent-child center, what that was going to look like, and recognize that the parent-child centers were going to be spread across the state. And that got updated again. And then this last time, when we were really looking at it, we had by that time adopted the standards as a statewide organization. And there was lots of discussion with our legislators as we talked about what was going to be valuable in opening up the old statute and renewing it in a way. What language was important? What information did our legislators need to know about the parent-child centers and how we operate and how we're defined? So it was part of many conversations with legislators, mostly one-on-one conversations between directors and legislators from their region, talking about this growth of the parent-child centers in terms of the scope of the work we might be doing and this tool. I hate to say that it's a tool, but the way the standards themselves are giving us a greater foundation to grow the quality and consistency of that quality across our programs. And I think, like we've said, legislators and funders in general, they really want to know, well, how do we know if we fund this program that it's going to be a program of quality, that it's going to be a program that makes a difference for families and for communities. So being able to say, well, one way we know is because we're utilizing these standards of quality to assess the work that we're doing, and that gives us a lot of information, and also gives us these opportunities to build things within each region and across the state. So I think that really resonated with legislators. I would say it took a couple of years for that legislation to go all the way through. It also includes some language about the way we'd be funded, which was a change, and also a change that demonstrates that the legislature is seeing the network as an ever maturing organization that is more self-governing than once we were. So it's been a process, and a pretty exciting one.
Yeah, it is exciting. Thank you so much for sharing about your journey.
Well, thank you for asking. Appreciate that. Yeah.
And if there's any other questions, that was the end of the ones that had been entered into the Q&A panel, but we'll give you a last call for any questions that you may have. And yeah, thank you all so much for the wonderful questions. And thank you again so much, Christy, for being here.
Well, yeah, thank
so
you for the invitation. And I thank the people who listened and asked us, good questions. And, I hope it was valuable.
Yeah. Well, thank you again, Christy. And if anyone happens to think of any questions, we shared our contact information, and feel free to reach out anytime. And my contact information is on the website. So if you didn't get a chance to jot Christy's down, I can always forward things on to her. Happy to do that. And again, this recording will be available on the website by this time tomorrow. So feel free to share the link with your colleagues, and the PowerPoint presentation itself, the slides will be on there as well if you wanted to reference anything again after today. So all of that will be on the website. So just want to say thank you again for joining us for the webinar today. As a reminder, a brief evaluation will appear on your screen when you exit the webinar. We do really appreciate you taking a moment to complete that evaluation. We do read every word and use your input to plan future webinars. So thank you again so much. And thank you again to Christy for being here, and hope you all have a lovely rest of your Wednesday. Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you all.